Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. If you've ever felt like you're running on a treadmill that's just moving way too fast, and no amount of productivity hacks or weekend getaways actually seems to fix that bone-deep exhaustion, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating set of ideas that completely upends how we look at burnout, existence, and honestly, reality itself. We're going to look at some radical, mind-bending philosophical cures that might just finally bring us some peace.
To kick things off, let's look at a pretty common archetype. Let's call him Lucas. Lucas is going to represent our modern struggle here. He's hyper-connected, navigating LinkedIn, Instagram, 5 different group chats, pretty much all day long. But despite all that connection, he's dealing with this profound, hollow feeling. Social psychologists actually call this digital loneliness, and it's driven by what's known as the authenticity paradox. See, we have total unprecedented control over our digital avatars, right? But the constant performance of code switching, exhaustingly juggling all those different masks for different apps, it actually pushes us further away from any genuine self-expression.
35,000. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering number of daily decisions Lucas makes. That's how many choices the average adult navigates every single day. This relentless cognitive load leads directly to severe ego depletion and decision fatigue. I mean, your brain quite literally runs out of the regulatory fuel it needs to make rational trade-offs. So when life starts feeling like an insurmountable mountain, remember, it's not a personal failing, it is a mathematical certainty of the modern environment we've built.
So, how do we guide Lucas and ourselves out of this burnout? Here is our roadmap for this Odyssey of Unbecoming. We'll hit Section 1, the modern existential vacuum, Section 2, the illusion of reality, Section 3, a universe winding down, Section 4, the art of unbecoming, and we'll wrap up with Section 5, reaching the natural state.
All right, Section 1, the modern existential vacuum. Let's dig into this psychological overload and see exactly what's breaking down under the hood.
That hollowness we all feel, it's not just one isolated thing. It's a massive, systemic breakdown across the board. Existentially, our meaning structures have collapsed, which leads to this mass neurotic triad of aggression, addiction, and depression. Sociologically, we're dealing with anomie, basically a breakdown of shared norms that leaves us socially atomized and completely isolated. Cognitively, our self-regulation is tapped out, giving us that intense decision fatigue. And socially, those shallow digital interactions we talked about, they trap us in persistent suffering. Honestly, knowing this is kind of a relief. Feeling lost isn't a malfunction of your character. It's just the natural reaction to this exact systemic overload.
To escape all this, we need a totally different kind of map. Forget the traditional hero's journey, where you venture out to gain new powers, or wealth, or status. Lucas is embarking on a subverted path, an odyssey of subtraction. He isn't adding anything to his life, he's systematically losing everything that burdens him. He moves from the burnout of the ordinary world, through a road of systematic negation, into the dark night of the soul, all the way to existing simply as a witness. The radical shift here is that the cure for exhaustion isn't doing more, it's unbecoming.
Moving to Section 2, the illusion of reality. If we're going to systematically break down those burdens, we have to start by questioning the very nature of what is real.
Here is a wild thought from cognitive science. Human evolution didn't actually wire us to see the objective truth of the universe. It wired us strictly for survival. Think of our reality, what we see every day, as a simple computer desktop interface. The colors, the objects, even space-time itself, they're just helpful icons that hide the incredibly complex, unknowable physical truth. It's exactly like how a trash can icon hides millions of lines of complex code under the hood. So much of our exhaustion comes from stressing out over desktop icons.
And it gets crazier because quantum mechanics actually backs this up. The recent 2025 extensions of the Wigner's friend experiment mathematically force us to reject local realism. They prove by 10 standard deviations that a fixed, God's eye view of absolute facts simply doesn't exist independently of observation. The physical world isn't a fixed stage that we're just passively walking across. It interacts with our observation.
Reality is fluid, it's subjective, it is completely different from the rigid, stressful trap it feels like when we're burned out.
Section 3. A universe winding down. Now that the illusion is exposed, let's explore cosmic entropy and the radical ideas of the 19th century philosopher Philip Mainlander.
Okay, brace yourself for this one. Mainlander famously said, "The knowledge that life is worthless is the blossom of all wisdom." Now, I know that sounds intensely, ridiculously pessimistic at first glance, right? But he's actually suggesting something profoundly liberating here. He argues that realizing the futility of our endless frantic striving is the real key to profound peace. By accepting that chasing after temporary goals in an illusory world is fundamentally worthless, we finally give ourselves the ultimate permission to just stop trying so hard. So what does this all mean for us? Well, what if existence isn't a ladder to climb, but a river winding down to the sea? We are constantly told life is a ladder we have to aggressively, relentlessly climb, but Mainlander argues that existence is actually a process of cosmic entropy, things naturally winding down toward a state of rest. Our burnout? Our suffering? That's just the friction of fighting against a current that naturally wants to slow down and find peace.
Mainlander maps the universe's origin not as a creative act of building up, but as a fragmented movement toward stillness. He used this concept of divine suicide, now, not as a literal act, but as a gentle cosmic metaphor, where a primal lonely unity intentionally shattered into the fragmented, time-bound universe we live in today. And it did this with the ultimate goal of eventually settling into absolute nothingness and rest. So when you feel that desperate urge to just stop and disconnect from the rat race, you're actually aligning with the deepest physical laws of universal entropy.
Section 4. The Art of Unbecoming. How do we actually align with this cosmic stillness through spiritual subtraction?
If we turn to Ajativada, which is a 6th century doctrine of non-origination from Gaudapada, we find this idea that ultimate reality is completely unchanging. In the absolute sense, nothing is ever truly born, created, or destroyed. Lucas is exhausting himself searching for permanent meaning within an illusory, constantly changing world, what Gaudapada calls shadow pictures on a screen. But the screen itself, the true underlying reality, it never actually changes.
We see this taken to its absolute radical limit by the philosopher Yuji Krishnamurti. He experienced a biological transformation he famously called the calamity. He argued that human thinking, that constant, exhausting, neurotic chatter in our heads, is basically a neurological defect. I know, it sounds pretty intense, but he proposed that true liberation isn't about learning new spiritual facts. It's a visceral, biological death of the ego. It's snapping the endless continuity of thought so your nervous system can finally be free from the mind's exhausting machinations.
So, how do we practice this in our actual daily lives? We use a rhythmic method called neti-neti, which roughly translates to not this, not this. Whenever you feel totally overwhelmed, you systematically negate the things that aren't the true you. You mentally acknowledge, I am not my physical body, I am not my external senses, I am not my biological constituents. Actually, I'm not my anxious mind either. You just keep stripping away these temporary labels in a process of practical negation, over and over, until only the truth, pure awareness, remains.
Which brings us to Section 5, reaching the natural state. What happens when we finally step out of the vacuum and just simply exist? In ancient philosophy, this destination is called Turiya, the fourth state. Think about it this way. Enlightenment isn't gaining a new superpower, or snagging a better job, or finally perfectly optimizing your daily routine. No way. It's just stripping away the clutter to reveal Turiya. It's the peaceful, quiet background awareness that was already there the whole time. Acting as the unchanging witness, just watching the movie of your life play out across waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And we're going to leave you with this really profound thought. If there was never a separate self to realize in the first place, and reality is really just a passing show of desktop icons, what are you still exhaustingly searching for? Once you stop fighting the cosmic current of the river
And once you exhaust all your incorrect answers about who you think you are, you might just find that you don't need to search anymore. The entire journey of unbecoming simply reveals that you were home all along.